Good afternoon, everyone. This is Keith Whalen from RPI. I want to thank you for taking the time to attend our webinar on Smart Office, Jump on the Smart Office Hayride, courtesy of Mr. Chris Gordon, fantastic presenter. Very interesting. We try to change up the content a little bit when we do these presentations. This is a brand new presentation that we're doing today. Yep. Chris has worked very hard on. A lot of interest, it turned out. One of the ones with the highest level of registration that we've seen in quite some time. A couple of quick housekeeping notes. We will be recording this webinar. It takes us a little while to get it edited up on YouTube. But when we do, Mr. Logan Miller will be sending you an email follow-up that you can watch it again and share. And the second is, Chris loves questions. It really helps us if you have anything to ask or add or comment on. Lastly, I just want to, talk a little bit about, Smart Office. Probably folks all across the gamut, super users, not using it, and so forth. Maybe some technical folks that support it or looking to deploy it. This presentation is going to focus on, users and how to get the most out of it, and we'll try to cover a little bit of that range, but for the most part, we'll do that. And Mr. Gordon has kindly invited me to chill out with him, so I'm going to do that and let him get started.
All right, thanks, Keith. And like Keith said, so the presentation is primarily focused around building a workspace for an AP super user, right? So we're gonna try and explain how you can customize your Smart Office workspace to make the way that you work more efficient. And just because we're showing this in the terms of an AP super user doesn't mean that you can't translate this into a buyer role or someone else. So just keep in mind, we're looking at AP specific forms and things like that, but the functionality really it's throughout all the modules within Lawson. Okay, so we'll spend a little bit of time talking today, who should consider using Smart Office. And then the bulk of the presentation is kind of going through the steps to build yourself a workspace from scratch. And we'll have Q&A time allotted at the end of the presentation, but like Keith said, if you have questions as we're going through, feel free to interrupt us. A lot of the presentation is embedded videos in the PowerPoint, so that's a good time. If you do have questions as the video is playing, we can kind of answer some of those too.
A little experimental with the videos, hopefully it works out well.
All right, so a little bit about RPI. We've been founded in 1999, located here in Baltimore, Maryland, and we have about 70 or so consultants located across the country, specializing in all the different Lawson products. And this is a picture of us at Inforum back in July. I think we got about half or so of our team here.
Helpful arrow with Mr. Gordon hiding in the background.
I was late to the picture. All right, so who should consider Smart Office? I get that question a lot, and Smart Office is really a tool for anyone that uses Lawson. So, the casual user all the way up to the power user, but the power user is going to get the most from it. So they're going to be the ones that can take advantage of the form personalizations the most, creating that customized workspace. If you're in Lawson multiple hours a day, 5 days a week, we kind of deem you as that power user, and that's really where you can take advantage of this tool. But that's not to say that a casual user can't use Smart Office. You just might not, the benefits aren't as scalable as though you are one that does use Smart Office or Lawson a lot. All right, so what we're going to do, like I said in the beginning, is just kind of show you, we're going to start from the end. We're going to work our way, give you an idea of what a canvas could look like and how we can start personalizing forms, adding StarPads to our canvas, and then we're going to break that out as we go through the presentation and kind of show you how to do each individual, each one of those different items. Okay, so we're going to play this video, and this is just a brief walkthrough of, our end goal. So as we're going through this, kind of get an idea of what we're looking at, and just know that we're going to go through most, if not all, of what you're seeing here in a more detailed breakout.
So what's happening in this video right now, Chris?
Right, so we have our Smart Office canvas, and as you can see, we have a bunch of different things on it. Right, so we've zoomed into here on our StarPad. And this StarPad is just a nice way for you to group commonly accessed forms in Lawson. These are all user-defined, the way that you see it broken out here between maintenance and processing and your pay cycle. That's just what I did. These StarPads are totally customizable, and you essentially add your forms within those categories. And the StarPad acts as a launching point for you as a user. They're good for beginner users, right? If you just hire someone and they're not familiar with these Lawson forms, you can give them one of these StarPads and say, hey, here's your job. You focus on these reports, these things to run, these screens to hit, instead of making them memorize AP20, AP10, because eventually they're going to be going away.
I would definitely take
Anyway.
the newest guy in the room and put him in charge of the pay cycle.
So what do we have here? We have info browsers, and we're going to get into how you build each one of those, but this first one is a buyer's message. As you can see, these info browsers are good for exception reporting. We're creating lists right on your canvas. We have an open invoice report up here, which is just a simple query against AP invoice with some conditions on it that can drop a nice chart onto your canvas that is automatically updated with new data. You can sort and filter and search for different invoices within that info browser. It does take a little bit of knowledge of the Lawson tables. You need to know what fields you want to look at and what tables those fields live
So you're
on.
going to walk us through how to build these in a little bit. Okay.
Yeah, we're kind of just giving you a high-level look at what we're going to be getting into soon. I think we might have stopped. Okay, so we had a little bit of a lag there, but what we did here is from one of our AP10 list or info browsers, we've actually launched to the AP10 form. And it just so happens that this AP10 form has a new browser that we've added that actually shows where on a map that vendor's located based off of the address information on that AP10 record. And as we scroll through vendors, that automatically gets updated based on those variables. So just kind of an idea of what you can do within Smart Office. Attachments live right on the form, so if you want to throw your W-9 up to your vendor record, those attachments will stay with your vendor record. They'll just live off to the side here, off the form. So the idea is that you can do much more within Smart Office than you can in Portal or Mingle. All right, so this is ListView. This is AP20 in a list-driven form. And we're going to get into how you can customize this form to present different columns and different data that you need. But essentially, ListView is a way to search and filter for specific records within Lawson. It makes that process a lot easier, given the fact that you have these column headings on top of these fields and the ability for you to actually add new fields that you want to this list view. And just keep in mind, we're doing all of this customization and modification underneath a specific user. So right now, we're not updating globally anyone's settings. We're just updating my user in Smart Office.
So if I'm supporting the deployment of the Smart Office, are these, can I migrate that? Can I have something set up for a default, say AP invoice entry, and then deploy that to them?
Yeah, totally. So, you can build out those custom forms the way you want them to look, showing and hiding different things, adding certain personalizations that you see here, and then deploy that out to departments. And the nice thing is that you can actually have different types of forms for different departments, right? So one person's, question?
We got some questions.
So Chris, we have a quick question, and that is, are we seeing Infor 10 or version 9?
Are we seeing Infor 10 or version 9?
Yes.
So Smart Office is compatible with either version 10 or version 9. It's a rich client that you have installed on your desktop that you point to either your version 9 or version 10 Lawson.
So what version of Smart Office is this? Let me rephrase the question on their behalf.
So this is version Smart Office 10.1.1, and I think the latest Smart Office version is 10.2.0.
And this is probably backwards compatible with 9, is what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, so that's where we're going, and I just wanted to give you a little high-level look at what we're about to get into. The first thing that we saw were those start pads. Remember the way that you can categorize and group all the forms that you commonly go to? So let's just take a quick walk through how you do that. And we'll play this video here to give you a demonstration of that. Okay, so from your navigator tool, you want to open up your StarPad Manager. And we're going to go and create a brand new StarPad. You need to give it a title first. So in this case, we're just going to do an AP super user, or AP invoice, no, apologies, AP super user StarPad. And what I'm going to do first is just define those categories, the groupings that I want my forms to be. So we'll just click Add next to our group, and these are user defined. So nothing comes with SmartOffice. It's all up to you. How do you want to define and break out those forms? So we have processing. We're going to do a maintenance section. We'll have a pay cycle section in there too, as well as a reporting section. And we'll go through and add the links to those different sections, show you how you can edit those.
I have a question. Are they mutually exclusive? So can I have AP 20 and multiple ones of these? Could I have the groups be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and put the forms I use each of those days?
Sure can. Whatever you want.
Another question is there a maximum number of items that could be returned when using the ListView and ISO?
So good question. Right off the bat, it's 250 items that will display in that list-driven form. If AP10 is a really good example, you have probably more than 250 vendors, but AP10 and ListView is only going to display those first 250. It doesn't mean that the rest of them aren't there. It just means that you're going to have to filter to actually bring up that record.
And so what are we seeing? What we saw there is we're starting to add forms to the different groupings.
Right. Yeah. So we're just creating shortcuts based off of those Lawson form numbers and dropping them into the different buckets that we want. And you would think that you would just type in this target or URL just the Lawson form number, but there's actually a specific syntax that we need to go out and
use?
And use, yeah.
Can we talk about what that syntax is?
Yeah, so you can either search for it by clicking this options button and then going out and typing AP10, or just type sforms:// and the token number.
I see there it says add new icon. Could you put like custom ones, like we could put Ravens ones on there and stuff?
Yeah, you can put whatever logos you want into your...
Like that Penn State logo on there.
Exactly, exactly. So we're just going to go through and drop one into the pay cycle and then one into the reports. And a nice feature of this is the ability to not just shoot out to a form, but shoot out to a form or a report or a job that's already populated with data. So if you have a report that you run all the time, or you have an AP 150 job scheduler that has the same or mostly the same parameters that you run each time, you can set up these icons to just shoot directly to that pre-populated form.
Nice.
It takes a little bit of time to set up, but I think that half hour or so that you use to set it up might pay off over the course of your use in SmartOffice. So we're adding the payment schedule here. Same idea. We'll give it a name, select an icon, type in our syntax, or go out and search for the form. And then we're going to add it to our pay cycle group. If you make a mistake and put it to the wrong group, you can still go back and edit that to change it to the right group. It's not over if you screw up. You can always go back and make adjustments. Okay. And last but not least, the reports. And right after this, we're going to get to show you how you create that exact link to a form. It's one extra step, but in my opinion, it's worth the extra effort to have that direct link. So the StarPads, again, we're creating the StarPad on my canvas, but these are meant to be deployed out through different departments. So the idea is, you create maybe an AP StarPad or a few AP StarPads. Maybe you have a buyer StarPad, an accountant, or a staff accountant type StarPad, all with different forms, and then you push those out to your users. So what we've done is just loaded that StarPad and then dragged it onto our canvas. So now it's just a double click away to get to it. And I'm going to launch the AP 150 from that link. Okay, so notice it's a blank form. So let's say we wanted to actually make that link go out to an AP 150 job we already have set up. What we need to do first is go out to AP 150 and bring up that job that we already have displayed or defined, and then go to Bookmarks, create a Canvas shortcut to the current. So what that's doing is just grabbing all those fields and parameters on the report and saving them in that link. You then go into the link that was put on your canvas, copy that link, and then go back into your StarPad and replace the old link with this new link.
So basically it's storing the parameters right in that URL type thing.
Yeah, because if I were to click that link that was put onto the canvas, it would shoot out to that form too.
Gotcha.
So you're just kind of going to work around and grabbing that link and replacing it into your StarPad. All right, so now you have a StarPad that you can deploy out to your users. You can add new forms and links to these as you go on, so it's not a one and done. You got the ability to, as your job evolves or as you get maybe a different role, you can get a different StarPad associated with that.
I have a quick question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So is this in for Smart Office or Lawson Smart Office? We're on Lawson Smart Office 10.2.1 and don't have StarPads.
Okay, so if you don't have StarPads, you need to go to, you have to have your system admin or someone that has a Smart Office administration role go into, I can give you the exact place to go, but there's a setting that you need to check off to enable StarPads. And once that setting's checked off.
Yeah, I mean, if there's something on the video you need to, you want to pause the video or want to?
I mean, I think we've gone over what we did, we're just adding that
So
link.
let me sort of dive into that question. Lawson Smart Office, Info Smart Office, they're the exact same thing. It's just sort of a rebranding thing.
Yep.
And really, the StarPads, it's just a setting that is controlled from the system administration
Totally.
standpoint.
And we'll send out an instruction on how to do that with
We
the
will,
link
yeah.
and that kind of stuff. So.
Yep, it's a quick
Get a
setting.
good answer.
You set off, and then once you log back into Smart Office, you'll have that StarPad Manager available.
And I'm assuming it is a standard part, it's not an add-on to Smart Office?
Correct, it comes with the product.
Okay, perfect.
All right, so yeah, let's move on. I think we've hit StarPads pretty good there. Again, just the ability to customize and only worry about the forms that you actually use. All right, let's talk about list views. So we looked at that before. Remember, it's the AP20 displayed in that different view, and it allows you to search and filter and do cool things within that list view. But let's say, Lawson's given us, we're going to play a video here that shows us what this list view is going to do, but Lawson essentially gives us predefined columns within this list view. And what we're going to show you here is how to add different fields that you want. And it's nice because some of those fields you can actually directly edit within the list view. So we're going to play this video to show us a little demo here.
Do the click.
Click on the video. All right, so list view forms, you might ask yourself, how do I know if a form is in list view? Well, just go to the form, and if it shows up like this, then it is. There's a lot of forms within Smart Office or within the finance and the supply chain modules that are list-driven.
You're a big fan of the list view, right?
Yeah, I like list view. It allows you to get out to what you need to a lot quicker. So essentially what we just did here was we went to Forms, personalization, choose columns, and it brings up a whole list. You see we have over 2,000 different columns that we can add to this list view.
Wow, that seems a little bit overwhelming.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend all 2,000. It might take forever for that to load.
But even to look through, like, I guess I just have to know what I'm searching for and go find it.
Yeah, so there's a couple ways to do it. The table column there, if you know that a field lives on the AP invoice table, you can always just do a filter on the table. But I'm going to go out and grab a cash code field that I know lives on AP invoice. And I'm going to grab the payment code. So you actually need to know the field number, or sorry, the field name, which for the payment code is actually bank institution code.
Yeah.
So if you actually type in bank there, you get a whole bunch of different tables, but I know that that field lives on my AP invoice table, so I'm going to do a filter on that.
Right, because that field shows up on vendors where it defaults onto invoices. Yeah.
Right. So that's the one that I want. And you see at the bottom, this is showing us what our list view is going to look like after we're done saving. All right, so we make that update, and then list view is going to refresh with these new fields in there. And if there's data in those columns, it's going to return that data. Now, your original list view is not lost, so there's always the standard AP20 that Lawson delivers. This is kind of like a toggle back and forth between what they had and what you've created. Okay? So again, the same benefit lives here. You've just added new columns to this list view form, and now you can actually use those to filter down. You know, if you only wanted to see ACH invoices out there, you can come over to the payment code field, type in ACH, click enter.
So this is AP20. So these are open invoices technically that it's showing you, right?
Correct.
Not released or historical ones.
Correct.
And this is our sandbox.
This
have
is.
quite a bit of data that
We have
we've managed to accumulate in there.
A lot of unreleased invoices.
A lot of unreleased invoices, huh?
So yeah, list view is good for a whole bunch of reasons. One, it allows you to visualize what's out there. So it's a quick way. You come to AP20 and you see you got 75 invoices out there that are unreleased. It's also a good way to get to those invoices by using vendor, invoice number, just certain ways to filter on that data. So what I want to show off this is this visualization that we're looking at. So what it's doing is going from this list view form, we're going to create a graph or a chart based off the data that we're looking at. And it's called a visualization just for that reason. It's allowing you to visualize the data that we're looking at. We have an option for a pie chart, different types of graphs out there. But what I want to do is just do a little pie chart broken down by vendor to show us, you know, how many vendor invoices are unreleased, what's the total sum of those vendor invoices that are unreleased. So you just play around with the settings, and I'm going to group up all my vendors. And this will, if you save your view, your data view, this will always display when you come to AP20, right? So if you just close out of this without saving, you're going to have to redo it all over again. But if you do save that data view, this chart will stay with it. All right, and then you just move your cursor over those pieces or those, you know, pizza slices, and you can see we have, for vendor 124, 7 invoices out there, 6 invoices out there. So just a quick way to visualize that data. Very bottom, if you do the chart responds to the list selection, and then go back and start clicking off some of those list-driven forms, we'll see that the chart's going to actually update based off those selections.
Oh, wow.
So you can kind of pick and choose from that data set to and have that chart dynamically update based off of your selections. All right. List view. So, I mean, I think I've made myself clear on the benefits of list view and some of the cool things you can do with it. But you also have the ability to push this data into Excel, into an Outlook message. So there's tight integration from SmartOffice to Microsoft. And we're going to show you in a second. Actually, right here, what we're doing is updating this field directly. So in ListView, you can actually, if this is an editable field, you have the ability to change that value and click change right up on the top of the form, just like you were on a regular AP20. So it's nice to do that mass change directly on this form. What we're doing here is just selecting all the rows, all the columns, and we're going to show you some of the integration, in this case with Microsoft Excel. You can just do a drop-down, Tools, Export to Excel. And however that list view was filtered on, it's going to export out into Excel. So a quick way of getting that data. You know, maybe instead of running a query wizard, which might take a little bit of time to log into and do things like that.
So the list view was limited to 250 transactions. When I export to Excel, am I under that limit as well?
So you'll get options if there are more than 250. Carlos, can we pause this for a second? Because I did want to show this.
Sorry about that.
So yeah, good question. When you export to Excel, there will be an option to say, do you want to export the whole list if it's more than 250, just the 250, or just the individual selections?
Okay. So even though you're limited in the view, you can still, your data output can be complete.
Totally.
Can be your vendor master.
Be the whole vendor master. Okay.
So I have another question.
1 second, Carlos.
Yeah,
What help do you point Smart Office to for forms?
Sorry, at the beginning of that?
What help do you point Smart Office to for forms? So that didn't make sense.
What help? I'm not sure I understand the question.
I'll get clarification. We'll come back to that.
Perfect. Okay, so
We appreciate all questions.
the integration with Microsoft Office. So we can play it from here, but we're gonna show you the ability to push out what we've selected from our list view form right into our Outlook message. So Lawson or Infor Smart Office is actually going to create that a nice graph or chart in your body of your email, and it'll actually attach a picture right to your email too, and then you can send this off to whoever.
Nice.
Okay, so that's list view. Those are some of the benefits that we can see from it. We're going to take this one step further, and from that list view, we're going to look at how you can edit some of that data in Excel.
I mean, obviously, you can always edit data in Excel. You're talking about updating the Lawson data from
Correct.
Excel ultimately.
So if you're familiar with the query wizard and the upload wizard, this is kind of a query from Lawson, a change in Excel, and then an upload back into Lawson, all through Smart Office. So we're going to play this video.
Just to verify, you can always just take the Excel data and use it for your own purposes. Maybe you're researching,
Totally.
you don't have to worry about updating Lawson. That's only an option if you want to do that.
Yeah, there's the two options, export to Excel, or do you want to edit the list in Excel too?
Gotcha.
Okay, so we're going to go to AP10 in this case. And what we want to do is add the payment code field, the payment code and the cash code field to our vendor master. So let's say, we forgot to maybe load specific payment codes to vendors when we did our initial setup, and we want to go back and change that. So we're going to go back out the same way that we added those fields, just add them again, and then we're going to export that data to Excel and add those payment codes and cash codes to our vendor records. And at the bottom here, you can move these columns around. If you want the cash code to be at the front, you just drag and drop. You have the ability to change how the column header displays. So if instead of cash code, you actually want the words bank account on there, you can make that change under the label field. All right, so we have our new question. We'll pause it for a second.
Yes, a couple of them. So the question is, do you point Smart Office help to the Info Center for S3, or does Smart Office have its own form help?
Okay, so there's Companion within Smart Office, which acts as that. Well, first there is form help and there is field help within Smart Office. But it also has a third layer called Companion, which you can install to have it act as like a documentation repository. So within Companion, you can go out and search for information around AP20 or GL40 or whatever forms that you have questions about.
What's the source of that data? Documents that the clients put on themselves, or is that
Infor.
Infor Extreme?
Yeah, Infor is published. It's pretty much the user guide. So if you go out to the Companion and type in AP20 invoice, it's going to bring back something that looks like the user guide for that section.
Gotcha.
Or for that keyword that you typed in.
Okay. When you get a chance, can you show what happens if you click on help for AP10? Maybe towards the end.
So I don't have the ability to show a live. This is all pre-recorded.
Okay.
But if you were to do a help on AP10, a form help would look exactly the same way it does in your version 9 or version 10 Mingle or portal. But the Companion will look a little bit different.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I can't show it now, but if we have their email address, I can send them a
Yeah, we
screenshot.
can probably just
Down a screenshot.
record a short video on that. Are there any Smart Office uses or benefits to RQC users?
It's a very good question, and without saying no, I kind of want to say no, but you can link out to RQC from Smart Office. So you have the ability to, just like we have our canvas with different things on it, you can have an RQC link from Smart Office out to RQC.
So I will say this, right? RQC is intended to be a soft client that's very easy, that's self-service to deploy to a wide audience that aren't core users. So that's typically what you see it on. And I can see that maybe certain types of organizations, the requester position sometimes is a little different, almost acts as a buyer, and then maybe you want to look at Smart Office. Smart Office is a thick client. It needs to be installed on each individual workstation, so it's not just URL accessible, and it probably is to require a little bit more of training and ramp up than RQC would. So probably not too typical, but I could see some organizations out there that maybe
Totally.
if the requester had a certain level of responsibility could
Outside of just requesting.
outside of just basic requesting off a template.
Yeah. And we're going to look at this in a little bit, but you can add, those exception reporting charts right to your canvas. So maybe a requester does need to look at other things, unreleased requisitions out there, or requisitions requiring approval. So you can create those types of reports on your Smart Office canvas if you are that requester. Okay. All right, so we've added our 2 new cache codes, and we're going to just go up to Tools, Edit List in Excel, and that's going to dump our entire list out into Microsoft Excel, where we can make use of Excel functionality to edit that list, copy, paste, drag, drop. I'm sure everyone's familiar with how to use Excel. So right now it just dropped everything out into a table. And what we're going to go in and do is actually type in our cache codes, our payment codes.
So is this visually different because we're in edit view instead of just the data dump where it looked more traditional Excel? So it's helpful. You know what you're in based on this.
Exactly.
pattern.
If it looks like this table and you see, it brings in a whole column over here to show you what you're changing in this table. So it is looking at whatever you're typing here and giving you an update.
It seems to not really be working though, right?
Yeah, we have a little bit of an error. It still works. It's just the way it looks.
The error that Infor would give you, that making this change in AP20 might give you, right?
Yeah. So it's saying that there's a change pending. Once we actually make the change, it's going to come back and say
gotcha.
change complete.
or the error.
Exactly. But I just wanted to show you guys how you can go through this list and copy, paste, drag, drop, different cache codes, different payment codes onto your vendors really quickly. So instead of having to tab through or scroll through each vendor and make this update, this is a real quick way of doing it. And not only for vendors, you can do this for purchase orders,
Invoices,
invoices, any form that's list driven.
journal entries.
Exactly. So again, think outside the box. I'm just showing you something here, but this functionality is capable throughout all list-driven forms.
So another quick question, and this might be for Infor, but just off the top of your head, do you need licensing for each user of SmartOffice? Or
Pretty sure the answer is yes, but it is something that we'll have to defer to Infor.
okay, we'll validate that with Infor and get an answer out to the group.
All right, so we can continue playing this video, but what you're seeing happen here is the add-in uploading, and we're seeing the same feedback that we would if we were on AP10 making these changes.
It's almost like the upload wizard where it's cool to sit back and watch.
Yeah, so we'll take a 10-minute break and
Little intermission.
all right, so there's an add-in. I don't know if you can see it at the very top, but the same way that Microsoft add-ins creates an Excel ribbon add-in, this Infor edit list in Excel does the same thing. And that's where all that
Does something need to be
lives.
installed in Excel for it to work? So there is an add-in that needs to be installed for this to work.
Yes, there's
sort of bilaterally there.
an Infor Excel MSI file that comes with a SmartOffice download that lives on the SmartOffice server that you need to grab and install on each PC for them to be able to use this functionality. Okay, so now we have updated a bunch of vendor records. Let's talk a little bit about personalizing forms.
It's probably one of the more exciting things. I mean, I know that in the past we've done a lot of customizations to forms, either for GL or Design Studio, but they are done for a set of a role, right? So organization, it's like you take that, AP entry, and they want to have the tabs in order for like
move
what they're
things
entering
around.
or whatever. But this is personalized.
This
right?
is, we're making it personal.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, so we're gonna play this video that's gonna show us how to default values onto forms, edit our tab order, hide fields, and this all starts off by going to a form and going Tools, Personalization, and you have a whole list of options. Default values, edit labels, edit the way that your cursor goes through that form. That is really good, and what we're looking at right now is good for someone that's a PO20, an AP20, a GL40, someone who's on one of those processing forms that kind of is a hands-on keyboard user, and you can change the way that that tab goes throughout the form. What we're going to show you here first is just how you can define or default a company value into your AP20 form. So if you're a single company setup and you never want to type your company number again, you have that option. We can just right-click on the form or on the company field and go down to default values, unconditional. And we're going to show you the difference between conditional and unconditional a little bit, but essentially unconditional means all the time I want to default this value into that field. And we're just going to go and type company 1. And now whenever we go to AP20, company 1 is going to default into that form. We won't have to type it. It's not going to default company 1 into every field or every form that has company as a field. You'd have to go to each form and do that change or make that personalization. But right now we're just living on AP20. All right, so next I'm an invoice enterer, an AP clerk, and I want my company 1 in there, but I also want to switch up the way that my tab goes throughout the form. And I want to land my first.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so it blows up your form, shows you what the current tab order is. And we've already defined company 1. We don't even need to have our cursor in there. And process level is going to default from your company. So we don't even want that in there. So I want my first tab, or the place my cursor lands first, to be our post date. So I can come over to post date, type in 1, and what you're going to see over the next minute or so is just going through this entire form and editing the way that tab is
So one of the
going
hotkeys historically with Portal is you could use the T for today's date.
for today, yeah.
Can you leverage that in SmartOffice?
Totally
too?
can.
You could have the post date be today's date and then not worry about that either. That's cool.
Yeah, you could default T into that field and have it always show up as today's date. So this is just making that job a little bit easier for an AP clerk. You might be shaving 10, 15 seconds off of a single invoice entry, but if they're entering 100, 150 invoices per day, you got a little bit of a time savings there.
So I see that you're sort of using high numbers to put them towards the bottom. Obviously, it doesn't have to be fully sequential. What happens if you repeat a number? Does it break the space-time continuum and totally crash Lawson? Or
No, so notice every time I don't want the cursor to go to that tab, I'm typing 99.
and it's finding the number for you.
Yeah, and I did it for all these, and notice they're changing. All of them are going up one.
They're getting bumped. That is cool.
Yeah, so it is,
Pretty smart.
Pretty
yeah.
smart. And hopefully you're not tabbing 99 times on a form, right? That'd be kind of crazy. So figure maybe between 5 and 10 tabs is a legitimate estimate for the amount of time that you're tabbing through. Okay, so this by itself might not be that great, but when you stack this on the fact that you can default values into the forms or into the fields, it does act as a little bit of a time saver over the course of an invoice entry. You can always revert this back to what it originally was, so it's not like you do this and save it and you're never going to be able to go back to the way it was. All right, so next we want to just show you how you can hide fields too, right? So the same idea, we go to, well, you can see here now, when I re-inquired on EP20, company 1 came in there automatically, and then I've just tabbed throughout the field or the form to show you how that has actually worked. All right, so next we want to hide fields. So SmartOffice has the ability to remove fields that you don't use on the form. If we're never using activities or the strategic ledger or our currency is always US dollar and you don't even want to have to worry about seeing that, you can hide these. Same way we go to Tools, Personalizations, Show or Hide Fields, make that unconditional so you're saying all the time, I don't want to see these fields. And
Quick question. Can we push out these personalizations to a user or a group of users, or does the user have to perform these personalizations themselves?
so that's the nice thing about this, is that you can do this once and then deploy it out, these personalizations out to a whole department. So not every single, if you have 10 people in your AP department, you don't have to have 10 of them come into a room and say, hey guys, here's what we're going to do. Everyone do it. It'll be in there for the whole day.
That would be fun. Yeah.
So this is typically done by a super user of the department that meets with the department and figures out how you want these forms to look. A collaboration exercise. And then that SmartOffice or that form gets pushed out to that department.
So some of the functions seem similar to Design Studio. Is Design Studio eliminated in SmartOffice or complements SmartOffice or irrelevant?
Yeah, so
So Design Studio modifications are for Portal and or Mingle, and SmartOffice is a different UI, basically.
and the way that you could replicate, so Design Studio is to Mingle or Portal as the Java scripting tool is to SmartOffice.
There you go.
So there is a scripting tool that you can, if you have a coder that knows Java, make similar updates to your SmartOffice screen as would Design Studio make those updates to Portal.
Right. So they're just different UIs.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, so quick video here again. Same idea, we're personalizing some more. We're going to edit some labels and make specific fields required. And the picture I kind of want to paint here is on our invoice. We have these user fields all over the place, and some people use them and some people don't. Mm-hmm. But for a new user coming in, they're looking at that and saying, well, what does that mean? What is that field that's next to user field 1? So what we want to do in this scenario is edit the way that invoice user field displays. And we're going to make that change to invoice approver level 1 because the way that we operate our business requires that that user field be populated with a user because we're in some sort of process flow that's looking at that user field and routing. Okay, so we're going off the user field tab on AP20, and we're just going to go back up to Tools, Personalizations, edit the labels to allow you to switch that.
But we're going to chill here first.
But we're going to wait here for way too long.
No, you don't want to be too productive here, not too fast. This is where you take, coffee.
Yeah, go get a coffee.
Yeah.
It's nice to see what that is, right? User field 1 to some people means something, but invoice approver level 1 means something to anyone that knows how to read, You know what that is. And in this case, we have, according to our business model, we need to be populating these two fields because we have a process flow routing these invoices after the fact. So putting a legitimate label onto that field makes total sense.
Super cool. I've seen those user fields used for so many different things.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes it changes, right? Like sometimes, over the course of 5 years, you might be using that field for something, and then you don't ever use it again.
Yeah.
New people come in and like, well, what was that?
Yeah.
What did that mean?
Yeah. Well, I've seen it used a lot on AP10, vendor records and so forth. So.
And now I want to make that required because this is part of a process flow. And if there's nothing there, then the flow is going to bomb out or, something's going to happen. So in addition to the required fields that Lawson puts on AP20, we can make our own. And
So tell us about conditional fields. How do these work?
yeah, so these are cool. So in addition, in parallel, you can make a field required all the time, or you can say, based off of a certain variable, I need to make this field required. And in this case, maybe every time we use a specific vendor, Keith is the approver.
Yeah, I think it's trying to catch up here.
Yeah, I'm not sure which one you're seeing. If you're seeing this
I
screen.
see this, yeah.
Okay. So what we want to do here is say, we started off that user field and we want to say we're going to make it required every time we use that vendor. So if I use a different vendor, it's not going to be required, but maybe some logic in that process flow is looking for vendor, and then it's going out to look at that user field to make sure it's routed to the right person. All right, so that's just a quick little snippet on how you can incorporate editing labels and conditionally requiring fields on your forms. All right, last conditional formatting video here. Again, a little bit of the same. We're gonna have we're incorporating activities and account categories into this, right? So if let's say we have a project going on, and every time it's hitting a specific accounting unit, we wanna make sure that an activity is coded. And every time it's hitting a certain account category, we wanna make sure that a specific account category is put on there.
So this could be something like if the account is construction in progress, needs to have an activity.
Correct.
Which we can also sort of force through GL, except GL gives it to you when you try to release it, it's checking, and here we can force it right upon entry.
Yeah, and this is actually putting a value into that field instead of just making it required. So if you have some sort of mapping between account categories and accounts, you can say if this account, then this account category. And we can put that conditional formatting in there. So we're about 10 minutes before the end, and I do want to look at the info browsers that we touched on first. So we've spent a little bit of time on the conditional formatting, so why don't we jump ahead and just finish up with the info browsers.
Very cool stuff.
Yeah, if you have questions about this or you got things going through your head, can I do this, can I do that, feel free to email me and I can point you in the right direction there. Okay, so we are going to look at customizing our canvases for exception reporting. Yeah, so we got a video here that's going to go through how do we build, remember that the open or the buyer message chart that we looked at before? we're actually going to go through and just show you how easy it is to set one of these up. Okay, so we can right-click onto our canvas, and it brings up our widget library. So this holds our calendar widget, anything that we can kind of drag and drop onto our canvas. So we want to go out, and we want to look at our Lawson Info browser, and we're going to give it a name of buyer's messages because that's what we're looking at.
Very creative.
Very creative. I was under a strict timeline to get this done. I couldn't be too creative. And the next part that requires a little bit of Lawson knowledge is the tables. So you got to pick where this data is coming from. And they give you a couple options. So if you know the system code, you can filter on your system code. And we know that these fields we want live on the MA invoice message table. So that's where we're going to start. And then we're going to pick the fields or the columns from that table that we want to display in the widget. Lawson gives us 5, but we can remove some of those. We can add in the ones that we want. And the form that we're going to do that on is, very similar to that list view form that we saw before where we were adding and choosing the columns. So I'm going to take off suffix and bring in a few other fields here, and you can kind of watch with me as we go through. Bill, are there any questions now?
Yes, we do.
Be a good time for a question.
So can you make the select list conditional on another field? For example, if you pick one company, the select list only gives you items related to that company. So can you make the select list conditional on another field?
I think what they're asking is, can you, if a field has a selection to choose from, can you turn that on or off?
I don't know if that's what they're asking.
No?
We'll have to get back with you on that one. All right, next one. Is there a way to have values carried from form to form, like in Portal AC10, then AC07 key field transfer?
Right, so there is that nice functionality of if I'm on an AP20 form or an AP30 form and I go to an AP30.3 form, will the data that I've looked at transfer to that next form? And the answer is yes. And what's even cooler is that Lawson and SmartOffice, you have the ability to add new related forms. So Lawson gives you a bunch of related forms, but you might find that some other forms are valuable too to have, and you can add those forms in there as well.
Create that. That's very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
All right, so we're just going through. We're picking all the different fields that we want on that info browser. At this point, you guys should be pretty familiar with the way that this looks and how you add things and how you can move fields around.
So this has really been a great presentation. I'm really grateful that you spent the time to put it together. I thought I knew a lot about SmartOffice, but I actually learned a lot today. Sometimes it's different to see things than to hear about them. Our presentations are very content driven, but I think it's actually pretty appropriate to talk about. You do these workshops with SmartOffice, which are basically intended to increase user adoption and deployment. And obviously, this is from a technical standpoint, these are your customers and increase their satisfaction. Can you tell us a little bit about them? How they work? What are they like?
Yeah. So they're, from my standpoint, and I might be biased, but I think they're pretty beneficial for the client. A lot of clients often have SmartOffice and they don't know what it can do. But
they're just going straight into AP20 and doing it.
Yeah, they're like, oh, cool, another interface.
Yeah.
Great. That I got to launch from a desktop instead of go out to a web browser. So I think the way I usually approach that is a 2 or 3 day session where you go out and just do a general training. Hey, a lot of what we're doing right now, but just on your own system, with your users involved and actively participating.
Are you asking them, like, what do you, tell me about how you guys do this? I mean, it's customized for their uses.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's the training is, tell me how you're doing this, and that's the first part of the training. And the second part is breakout sessions where we actually work with the users to develop, these info browsers or personalize the forms the way that you need them. and just get them comfortable with working with Smart Office.
With the development, so they can continuously do that in the future, right? Leave them with something and get them playing with all the stuff and thinking about it.
Totally.
I bet it's very satisfying to
Yeah, a lot of times I walk out and they're like, oh, great, like AP's always has good feedback from this. They see what we can do, and a lot of their processes, they're thinking to themselves, what reports can I throw onto my canvas?
Yeah.
Listings and things like that. So
Chris, a couple of comments here, no questions though. Just shout them out. Another fabulous webinar. This was great information. Really helped me see what Smart Office can do, not just conceptualize.
Great.
So thank you.
That's the point. Thank you for the feedback. And we're just walking through some more here, too. You guys can feel free to follow along. This, again, is just a different open invoice query that we're running off of a different table. But, you can have as many of these widgets and clutter up your canvas as much as you want. It's really up to you.
Lots of widgets.
But that's the nice thing about it. It's so tailored to different users and different departments that you can just create that workspace that you want, and that really works for you. What's nice about this too is from the list-driven, or from this query, you can actually launch out to a form. So if you have an AP10 listing here, you can say, or an AP20 listing, you can tell the browser to launch out to AP20 by clicking on one of those, the results from that query. So again, just another way of navigating within the tool, specifically from that info browser, which I think is pretty cool. All right, so yeah, again, more of the same. Just finding fields, adding them to your browser. And once you have these, this is kind of step one, is kind of wrapping your head around what Smart Office can do for you. And then step two is, all right, well, what do I want to limit and how do I want to roll this out? Everything you're seeing, you can have Smart Office totally locked down and have users do absolutely nothing and available actions of pretty much nothing, or you can have it totally wide open and have them do whatever they want. And I usually find the client settles somewhere in the middle of that. There's certain things they don't want users to do, and there's some things that they do. So that's step two, is figuring out what your organization wants and how you want to roll this particular tool out.
One of the concerns I often heard early on was, wow, if we deploy this to the users, they're going to do all kinds of crazy stuff, and then they're going to be calling me and asking for help. Has that been your experience, or?
Not really. I mean, it's not like they're ruining anything. A lot of the times, I like to recommend that there's a central maintenance authority for this, and they're the ones that are regulating, pushing these out to HR.
Gotcha. So you're not empowering everybody to customize their own necessarily.
It can be a little bit of both, and it just depends on how good your users are, the level of sophistication with the users, as well as your policies within your organization. But just because a user screws up a form doesn't mean they can't just get pushed out another form, or they fix it themselves.
This is not a high maintenance product. We also find that from a technical side, installing it, deploying it, supporting it,
Fairly
super low
straightforward.
maintenance. I mean, this is very small effort all around.
Yep.
Generally speaking.
Yeah, it's a tool that I really think is a valuable extension to your Lawson system.
So a couple of questions, some I can answer. We'll receive a link to the session recording. Absolutely. Takes us about 7 to 10 days to get this out and ready, and we'll have it up on YouTube, and everybody who attended will be notified first. We'll also post it on Digital Concourse. Question, if you close an info browser using the X, how do you get back on your canvas?
It's a very good question. Well, I guess that answer is dependent on a couple things, but if you have that widget or that browser saved somewhere else, you can import it again. But if you close it out without having exported that or having that managed somewhere else, then you got to start from scratch.
Okay.
Ouch.
Yeah.
I've been able to link to LBI dashboards in a custom menu or list, but can you also link it to a specific report link on a dashboard?
Do we know what we're linking?
No.
Let me get back to you. I'll reread the
All
question.
right. We'll reread that and send it out. Are info browsers constantly running, therefore slowing down the system?
Good question, and that's one of the things that IT departments, when I go on site, actually bring up. They run as soon as you initialize Smart Office. So if you have 10 info browsers running on your canvas, the moment you launch Smart Office, they're going to start going out there and querying your tables. But at the same time, I've never seen a performance issue because of these. It's been a concern for some clients, but
It
never
hasn't
a real
manifested
issue.
itself yet.
And I actually know of a customer that has all 760 users set up on Smart Office, and they
Wow.
really haven't seen any issues.
And there's also a setting too. You can disable the auto refresh of those widgets. So if you only wanted to run them at a certain time, by yourself manually, you can turn a setting on, then you just run them by yourself.
So one last question. It looks like, how is Smart Office affected by non-Lawson upgrades?
Yes, so their Smart Office is automatically upgrades in terms of
9 to 10.
9 to 10.
9 to 10 type stuff.
Right, so you could totally have a Smart Office that you're running off version 9 and then just repoint that to your version 10 system. Or you can reinstall the latest and greatest Smart Office version brand new and point that to your...
So let me dive into that question. So if I install the latest and greatest Smart Office, what happens to all my widgets?
That's a good question. So they can be brought over.
Okay.
You won't lose everything, but there's a little bit of work involved.
A little bit of work involved. Okay.
But you do get some benefits of the latest version of Smart Office. This one I have here doesn't have the virtual, share a screen within the application, which the latest one does.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So there's some nice collaboration features in the latest ones.
So that virtual share of screen means that I can be looking at something in GL90 and I can email Chris basically a dynamic active link of the screen to be like, Chris, look at this.
Yep.
And it'll come up on
My Smart Office.
his Smart Office, load at
action.
GL90 with the data.
Correct. Yeah, it's a cool tool to collaborate between, but again, like those users have to be Smart Office users in the system at the same time. But if all of those components are met, then yeah, it's a nice way to collaborate and work across departments.
So one other question was, what's the largest amount of Smart Office users out there for one company?
I'm guessing the 760 is pretty close.
760.
I mean, that's a
Sounds
lot.
pretty
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'll publish the answer to who that company is once I check what their their director of
Yes, yes.
financial applications.
Yes. Well, I
Well,
think
thank-
that wraps it up. Thank you very much, Chris. Great presentation. Thank
you,
you all
guys.
for attending. Really appreciate your time and sticking around a few extra minutes. Got another work coming at 3 o'clock. We're going to be talking to EPM. Hope to see you then.
Thank you.